Hi guys, what's up? My name is David and welcome back to my channel. So I've been getting a lot more interaction on my channel recently, which is great, technically. But as a person who decided to be openly trans on the internet, more interaction does not necessarily mean in a positive way. So for some reason, if you decide to be open about your identity on the internet, people seem to think that they are entitled to tell you anything they want. And the good thing about social media is that everyone gets a platform where they can express their thoughts, let their voice be heard. But the bad thing about social media is that everyone gets a place to express their thoughts and let their voice be heard. So if you're trans or any other minority that's being discriminated against and you decide to be open about it online, you're gonna get hate comments. And today I want to look at some of the hate comments I got and focus on one specifically because I just have thoughts on that. But before I get into the one that I want to talk about in this video, there's one honorable mention that I got, and it's this one. So this might look very cryptic, but this is actually transphobic slang, and it stands for "you will never be a woman." And that's funny, because I am a trans man. So yeah, of course I will never be a woman. That's like the whole point. And this example and other examples like this just goes to show that people don't actually care about you as a person. They don't hate you as a person. They hate the thing that they associate you with. So they won't bother looking into who you actually are. They just hate trans people. And they will hate on trans people, even if their hate comments are just incorrect. So if you struggle with getting these comments, just know that these people don't actually care about you as a person. They're just shit in general. But the comment I wanted to focus on is one that I have gotten multiple times and I've seen other creators get, and it's that what I'm doing, or me being trans, is not natural or unnatural. And I want to express my thoughts on that because I have a lot of thoughts. So first I want to say that not everything that is natural is good. Like, if you could choose between these processed chips and these berries, which one would you choose? If you chose the berries because they are natural, then you are fucked because they are poisonous. So yeah, as I've said, not everything that is natural is good. And not everything that is unnatural is necessarily bad. Sure, there might be better options, natural alternatives, but sometimes something that is considered unnatural is the only way out. And the thing with being trans is that being trans itself is anything but unnatural. Being trans is a human experience, and even though, of course, only a small minority of humans experience it, it is still somehow naturally possible to experience it. I didn't become trans because someone told me to. I was trans. I happened to be trans, That's something that naturally happened in my brain, in my body. So being trans itself is absolutely not unnatural. And to say that someone's existence is somehow unnatural is just beyond me. But there is a part of being trans that I agree is not natural. And you're absolutely right. The hormones I use to look the way I look are not fully natural. And the surgery I got to remove my breast tissue was also not a natural process. But that does not mean that the changes they have caused in my body are also unnatural. If injecting testosterone into my body would be unnatural, then my body would not be able to deal with it. Instead, it would have some sort of allergic reaction. If the testosterone was not compatible with my body would just reject it, or I would die. But as you can see, I am still very much alive. And the introduction of these synthetic hormones into my body has still caused processes that are natural in a human body. They have simulated a puberty that I would have had if I was a cisgender man. So these processes that trans people go to are not unnatural. They're just made with the help of ingredients that might not be naturally sourced. But that doesn't make the process itself unnatural. And the same thing with surgeries. Yes, of course, taking some part of your tissue from your body is an unnatural procedure. But as you can see, once again, my body has since healed from the procedure and adapted to the things that were taken away from it. If this was unnatural, this would not have healed, you know? So these processes that trans people go to are just a combination of a lot of things, part of which are natural and part of which might be considered unnatural, but they still lead to natural results. And a thing that comes with this argument of being trans and transitioning not being natural is the argument that it is a choice. And once again, this has two parts. So, no, being trans is not a choice. You are trans or you're not trans. The choice is whether you decide to act on this feeling or not. You can choose to live with the thought, the knowledge that you are trans, but refuse to transition because of whatever reason. Maybe it's not safe where you live, or you're just not ready to come out yet, you're not sure, and that's all perfectly okay. Or you can make the choice to transition, but that doesn't mean you choose to be trans. It means that you choose to accept your feelings and fix them in the only possible way, that is transitioning. But the question after that might be, so you can just choose not to transition. And that is also not as simple as it sounds. Although yes, technically one might choose not to transition, but it's not just a easy choice to make. First of all, getting to transition, being able to transition, takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. In most countries, you have to go through very intense psychological evaluations before you're able to medically transition. So sometimes someone might not be ready for that yet because they have other problems that they're dealing with, and generally they can be helped with that. So in a way, they're not choosing to transition yet, but they're not completely letting the choice go. And from what I've heard from people who transitioned later in their life, while they knew basically all their childhood and youth that they were trans, but they just tried to fit in and be normal, meaning cisgender. But at the end, they realized that it's not really a matter of choice anymore. They just have to do this in order to be able to live as themselves. And I personally transitioned pretty young. I came out at 12 and I started testosterone at 16. So I haven't struggled that much with not being able to accept this thing about myself. But I know that people who come from, for example, very abusive households or very religious environments might have a lot of trouble with trying to suppress these feelings and not wanting to transition and stuff. But at the end of the day, it's not just a choice that someone wakes up and decides to transition. A lot of thought, a lot of mental and physical effort has to go into it. So it's not just a choice. And once again, just because something is or isn't a choice, and just because something is or isn't natural, does not inherently mean that it's good or bad. You wouldn't tell someone who needs a hip replacement that they shouldn't do that because it's unnatural. Like, sure, technically they could still continue living without fixing their hip, but it will only cause more problems along the way. So the earlier they do it, the better. And the same thing with transitioning. Yeah, sure, you can technically continue living without medically transitioning, but if you know that that is what you need in order to be happy in life, then putting it away is only going to make things worse. So, yeah, I guess the thing about all these transphobic comments is a lot of ignorance. Sometimes it's saying, okay, I don't like this thing, I don't want to know anything about this thing, I just know that this is wrong and I will stand by my opinion that this is wrong. And you can try to argue with these people, but they won't change their opinion. So, as an advice for other trans YouTubers or any people online, just if you get comments like, oh, you'll never be this, or you'll always be this, these people do not want to be reasoned with. So there's no point in interacting. And I know it's difficult. You don't want these people to win, and I get that. I try to not interact and delete these comments. But sometimes it's just too hard. Sometimes you want to argue and tell these people that you have no rights commenting how I choose to live my life. Because they don't. As I've said in the beginning of this video, just because someone chooses to openly identify as trans does not give you the right to tell or ask them everything you think you can. Like, no. And different people might be okay with different things, which is why if you have anything that you want to know, first of all, Google is free. If you have questions about trans people or the concept of being trans, just Google it. Go on to, I don't know, Reddit or something and type some question in r/too afraid to ask. Whatever. But don't assume that any trans person you meet will be okay with answering your sometimes very personal questions. And definitely do not assume things about someone's identity and tell them that their identity is wrong. If you don't agree with people being trans, then why are you in trans people's comment sections? Interacting with transgender content will only make the algorithm think, this person likes interacting with trans people. Here's more. So if you don't want to see people like me on your feed, stay away. Leave us the fuck alone. We just want to live like anyone else. And some people just have to live life with extra steps. And the last thing you want to do is make it even harder for these people. Let us try to create an accepting environment where everyone can express themselves, but not in a way that takes away the expression of other people. Your personal freedoms are always being restricted by the personal freedoms of others. Sure, you can say a lot of things, but at the point where the things you would like to say go against someone else's right to exist, then maybe you shouldn't say them, Just because you can type anything in a comment section does not mean you should. And honestly, I just never get what the point is of hating stuff. Like, if you don't like it, just don't watch it. Click away, and you will not be bombarded with it by your social media algorithm. Like, if I don't want to watch specific videos, then I won't interact with these videos. I will make sure to press that I'm not interested in them. It's really not that hard. Anyways, thank you for listening to my rant, and I hope I've given an okay explanation on why being trans is not something that is crazy and unnatural, but that it is a human experience that people are allowed to experience. It's okay to be trans. It's perfectly okay to be trans. And it's also perfectly okay to think you're trans, but realize that you might not be. The human mind is complex, and sometimes, even though we think we know ourselves, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we really don't understand our feelings, and it takes time to realize who you are. And if you don't know it right away, that's perfectly fine. You have your entire life to figure it out. You don't need to be 3 years old and know you're trans. You don't need to be 10 years old and know you're trans. You can be 50, you can be 60, you can be 70. It's never too late. Or you can go your entire life without thinking that you're trans, and that's also perfectly fine. Because we still are a very small minority of people, even though transphobes online make it seem like it's this kind of queer epidemic, but people are just more okay with talking about their experiences online, and then it might seem like there's more trans people all of a sudden, but that's not the case. People are just more open about their own transition. You probably meet a lot of people in your day-to-day life that are trans, but you don't know because they don't talk about it. Not everyone decides to be open about it online, and that's perfectly fine. Not everyone walks around with a pin saying like I'm trans, and that's perfectly fine. There's not one way to be trans, and that's definitely why you shouldn't police someone's identity, especially if it's someone that you don't know and you just saw one video of them online. So yeah, thank you for listening to my rant once again. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.